I apologize if you didn't figure it all out with red-haired Shanks, but Oda just revealed something crazy, and I'm not talking about Shanks living with Garling and Shamrock in the Holy Land as a happy family. No, even though this does explain why Sengoku said, "Since it's you, Shanks, I'll take responsibility for it." Mind you, Sengoku was Fleet Admiral around the same time Shanks returned to the Holy Land. But I'm talking about something completely different. Shanks having his left eye be scarred as a devoted god of blade, aka a holy knight at the lowest level, the surface level. Since we see Shamrock telling him to heal and relax when it comes to finding the culprit, which is Fisher Tiger, for freeing all the slaves. And this only made me think of Shanks warning Whitebeard about Blackbeard and saying that a scar on his eye was aching. But I also want to highlight him calling Blackbeard Teach first, then Blackbeard when seeing him in Marineford. And Blackbeard's reply is even more scary. "It's still too early to be fighting you guys." And he was not talking about Ben Beckman, Lucky Root, and Yasop, the strongest Yonko top commanders in the New World. He was talking about Nerona Imu, the Gorosei, and the Holy Knight. So today it's time we take a closer look at the insane life of the Holy Knight Shanks. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel as we got insane One Piece videos on the way, so you don't want to miss it. Now, we got a lot of insane information in the recent installment of One Piece. Harold made a devoted god of blade, the same tattoo we seen Shanks have when talking to Scopper Gaban, and the same tattoo we seen Gunko have on God Valley. Big deal. The Gorosei explaining the 3 stages to the contract, the surface sea contract, that's pretty much a faint tie to, of course, Imu. But the deep sea and the seafloor contract is with the 13 chosen ones, and Imu have a strong connection. They're calling Imu God, and Harold's like, God? So obviously I think the translation could be different, could be called Great One as well. But there's a lot of hype over here when it comes to Oda getting more deeper into Imu and his servants. And Shanks helped Fisher Tiger save Boa and the rest of the slaves. And I do think this would be where he actually got his eye scarred, but I don't want to jump on that yet, as Shanks even is fooling his family, Shamrock, saying, "I wasted 24 years of my life," and pretty much saying that everything was disgusting when he was in the Blue Sea. But everything wasn't disgusting. He loved it. We seen Shanks in Odin's flashback. He loved being a Roger Pirate. One thing I must admit, give Shanks an Oscar, because he had not just us fooled as fans, he had his family fooled as well. I also want to highlight Shanks' mother being killed by Garling. Not a lot of people want to talk about this, but this is a big deal. It's the beginning of Shanks' life, and the mother in One Piece is obviously getting killed a lot. You just seen Ida get poisoned in the same installment of One Piece, but I want to talk about why Shanks' mother getting killed by Garling is a big deal, because you have to understand, a baby needs his mother. So Shanks losing his mother that early on, the same way Luffy lost his mother early on too as well. And we also saw Shanks' mother beg Dragon, another Will D member, to take care of her babies, and ended up, of course, being with the Will D member Roger and a role model to the other Will D member Monkey D. Luffy. I believe Shanks' mother being on God Valley only means that she has to be part of the Davy clan alongside Rox and Teach. Yes, Shanks' mother is a Davy D, and this would be a big deal because maybe that's the reason why Garling tried to hide it, because he didn't want Imu to kill his kids. We see that Garling pretty much has a love for Shamrock and Shanks, but they don't just have ties to the Celestial Dragons, they have ties to the Willet D as well. Not just any old Willet D, the Davy clan. Now, I really want to go into the life of Shanks and how he became a Holy Knight and how this shapes who Shanks becomes as a man. And Shanks was in God Valley at 1 year old, carried by Monkey D. Dragon, the father of Luffy. And of course, a lot of things were happening there. Celestial Dragons attacking, future Yonkos attacking, insane Captain John Delfood in situations where, of course, we see Shanks hit his head and Dragon lose him, and Shanks ended up in a treasure chest where the Roger pirates found him. Yes, Goldie Roger, Silver Israeli, and Scopper Gaban, they found Shanks as a baby, and this is how he found his new family, the Roger pirates. I also want to mention how Rox destroyed Garling on God Valley, but Garling was the one that killed him. Expect the same thing to happen with their sons in the future. Shanks destroying Marshall D. Teach, but of course Blackbeard killing Shanks. You know, Blackbeard is a devil fruit expert with the Yami Yami no Mi against the Haki expert, so it is kind of a bad matchup, so I wouldn't be surprised if Shanks does have the edge against Blackbeard, but I do think Blackbeard will do the final finishing blow on Shanks. Now, fast forwarding past God Valley, we know Shanks at 9 years old is seen wearing Goldie Roger's straw hat. Yes, and is called the Child of Destiny by Scopper Gaban when on Elbaf. And because of this hat, I do believe that's the reason why he was called that by Scopper Gaban. You have to understand that they went to Lafta without Shanks, and Roger, Rayleigh, Gaban, and the rest of the crew know the truth of the Straw Hat. I do want to say this, the fact that Roger made Shanks cry after coming back from Laugh-Tale, I think it definitely has something to do with his lineage and the true story of the Void Century, and how the Straw Hat doesn't just relate to Joy Boy, but also relates to Immu as well. When Shanks is 11 years old, his adoptive father, Goldie Roger, becomes sick. The reason why I think Roger was Shanks' adoptive father is because Shanks has his divine departure technique, but also, don't forget this, guys, Shanks had his Straw Hat. That means Roger and Shanks had a special connection, and the fact that they found it on God Valley, and we lost Rox's life, a Davy clan member, just to see another Davy clan member in Shanks. Yes, I do think Shanks has Davy ties to his mom's side. That's a theory of mine. But yeah, 11 years old, Roger becomes sick. Yes, when Shanks is only 11 years old, his father becomes sick, Roger. And it kind of gives me vibes of Whitebeard and Ace and that relationship there, because we do know that Shanks' actual father, Garling, hates Goldie Roger. So the fact that Roger's taking care of the Celestial Dragon, it's kind of like when Whitebeard took care of his rival, Roger's kid. That was a pretty cool scene there. When Shanks was 12 years old, this is where we see that infamous flashback and during the East Blue Saga where Buggy eats a dove fruit by accident because of Shanks, and Shanks ends up saving Buggy when he falls into the water. Now don't forget, Shanks, when he went to Luffy, said he can't join the crew unless he can swim. And we see this moment of Buggy now being able to swim, but we know Sopper, Gabon, Rayleigh, and Roger were all great swimmers. So we know Shanks has an opinion on dove fruits, and this is after he was a Holy Knight as well, so I do think Shanks is opposed to dove fruits for some certain reason. I wonder why. I think it has to do with the legendary dove fruits as well. When Shanks is 13 years old, that's where we got the infamous Roger versus Whitebeard clash, a 3-day battle. But I want to talk about what happens after the battle. After the battle, Shanks and Buggy are seen staring off at Marshall D. Teach, Marco, and Josie. These are like the young guys of the Whitebeard Pirates and the young guys of the Roger Pirates. You know, Shanks would end up being a Yonko, Buggy would end up being a Yonko, and Teach would end up being a Yonko. And of course, Marco would be the first division commander, like the vice captain to Whitebeard. Josie was a third division commander, kind of like the second guy during Marineford. So everyone became strong amongst these youth. But I want to talk about how Shanks is staring at Teach, and Teach is like, yo, these two look like, why are they so serious? And then Marco tells him, no, these guys are actually not just kids, yo. They've been on the crew for so long. They're pretty much men. And that's why they act like men. And then, of course, Buggy tells Shanks that guy didn't sleep. Blackbeard, he never slept. And Shanks says, whoa, he gets to live twice the life. But no, that means he's a monster. That's what Buggy says. Now, mind you, he is a part of the Davy clan, and they do have special traits and Buccaneer connections as well. But the fact that Buggy called him a monster and Shanks said he gets double the life, I think it really shows the connection of Shanks and Blackbeard, how they have been destined to be together when it comes to their clash, their battle, and their origins on God Valley. Now we see Shanks at 14 years old. This is where the Roger Pirates disband after coming back from Laugh-Tale. I told you about how Roger told Shanks something that made him cry. I think it has to do with his lineage of being a Celestial Dragon, of course, and this probably set Shanks into going back to the Holy Land and becoming a Holy Knight and having some soul searching as well after the Roger Pirates disband. I think 14 years old is a big moment in Shanks' life. It's the same way that Luffy, when he was 14 years old, was perfecting his Gomu Gomu no attacks. So I think 14 years old in One Piece, it does have some uniqueness to it. Then at the age of 15, Roger dies. Yes, Shanks' father dies, and Shanks is seen crying with the Straw Hat at the execution, and even tries to convince Buggy to join his crew. But Buggy gets mad because Shanks is not going for the Pirate King title. He's not going for the One Piece treasure. He wants to wait, and that's really pissed off Buggy. Buggy's like, I thought you were the one to inherit Roger's goal. So we definitely see a little look into why Shanks changed his mind. I think it had to do with what Roger told him after Laugh-Tale. And I think this also was the catalyst to Shanks becoming a Holy Knight. Now we get to the age of 17. This is where Shanks met Yasopp, which is a parallel to Luffy meeting Usopp at the age of 17 as well. But I want to talk about something more interesting. Why is Shanks in the East Blue? We know he's from the West Blue in God Valley. We know he's resided mostly in the Grand Line because the Roger Pirates, of course, conquered the Grand Line. So why is Shanks in the East Blue area, the weakest sea? We do know that a lot of legendary characters are from the East Blue. Mihawk was even residing in the East Blue for a little bit too as well after he chased John Krieg out of the Grand Line. I think the East Blue is a very special sea, not just because of Dragon and Luffy and Garp being from there as well. I think not the main Straw Hats being from there as well. I think there's something special from the East Blue that Shanks knows about. And of course, it wasn't just random. I don't think it was just random. And he definitely, Shanks being 17 years old, being in the East Blue and coming back later, of course, 10 years later to be exact, to meet Luffy was pretty awesome. Let's talk about Shanks at 20 years old. The reason why this is so significant, of course, is because Shanks at 20 years old is when Luffy's born. But I also want to mention this is the same time where he met Uta, who's a canon character at the end of Wano. So Shanks didn't have a scar, but Shanks, of course, Luffy being born. Don't forget Shanks' connection to Luffy. It goes deeper than just Shanks and Luffy in the Straw Hat. It also goes deeper to then Roger and Luffy and all that. It's more so Monkey D. Dragon on God Valley, saving Shanks as a baby. That is a deep connection there. Now let's fast forward to Shanks at 25 years old. Shanks at 25 years old is just leaving the Holy Land and going back to the Blue Sea like Shamrock said during Elbaf. Shanks, of course, has been scarred. Shanks has a tattoo, the seal, of course, that he got when he was a Holy Knight. And we see him talking with Scopper Gaban, where Scopper Gaban calls him the Child of Destiny. And a lot of spooky things are talked about when it comes to time manipulation hinted at. This is a very deep conversation with, of course, Scopper Gaban, who knows the truth of the One Piece world, and Shanks. I do believe what we later see Shanks like saying that he wants to talk to Harold now in Elbaf rather than Holy Land is a big deal. Shanks is probably the man who planned it all, if I'm being honest. Like, there's a lot of characters who just go with the flow. I think Shanks is a planner type, and I can't wait to see what he's been planning, because everything is starting to make sense after this Holy Knight reveal. Now, at 26 years old, I get more results from Shanks' planning. Shanks gets the Nika fruit. Don't forget, Shanks was trying to get information as a Holy Knight, and I think he got vital information from the Void Century, because after the Nika fruit's been said to avoid the world government for 800 years since the Void Century. So for Shanks to get it right away, I think it's a big deal. He fought it from Who's Who. He had his crew at the time. I do believe his crew, it did exist when he was a Holy Knight and infiltrating. Shanks, to me, has a badass life, and the Holy Knight feature made it even more sick, if I'm being honest, guys. It's not a negative, it's a positive. People calling him rat and everything. No, Shanks is outsmarting all you guys. Then at the age of 27, Luffy eats the Nika fruit. Yes, Shanks meets Luffy, and Luffy eats the Nika fruit, and Shanks gives his Straw Hat, and Luffy makes Shanks cry by saying the same words as Roger. Shanks also loses an arm to a Sea King protecting Luffy. And then later on in that year, he would meet Rayleigh. 27 years old was a big year for Shanks, in my opinion. And it's only like 3 years after him being a Holy Knight. So that also has to play into factor. And then I want to talk about Shanks at 33 years old. This is when he becomes a big deal in the private world. Shanks versus Loki. Yes, Shanks versus Loki, and he becomes a Yonko. Now, Loki has the legendary Delfru too, and he has insane Ragnar power too as well. Yes, Shanks versus Loki is a big deal. Loki is a 2.6 billion berry character, Yonko level characters. For Shanks to defeat him, and this would definitely catalyze him to being a Yonko alongside the guys who became peak pirates after God Valley. Then at the age of 34, Shanks meets Ace, Luffy's brother. Of course, this is Roger's son, biological son, and I think this is pretty cool because this is when, of course, Ace went out to be a pirate at the age of 17. I love this moment. It was pretty cool, honestly, seeing this interaction. I think more can be done after getting more of Shanks' life. This Shanks-Ace meeting could be even talked about more, the same way that Ace and Yamato's meeting got talked about. And I think Ace could tell Shanks what Luffy said, and Luffy could say, oh, he said the same thing to me. I think this could be a great time to even reveal it in a second look. And remember Shanks, when Ace that died at the funeral, he's like, yo, Ace did the exact same thing as Roger. Then, of course, this is the basic 37 years old Shanks, pre-time skip Shanks. We all know he was established Yonko at this time. We all know that he met up with Mihawk and had a party after Luffy's first bounty. And Mihawk said, I want to fight a one-armed man. Of course, many people are talking about Mihawk. I will talk about it a little bit later at the end of this video, guys, so don't worry. But yeah, Shanks pre-time skip, he was doing a lot of big moves, yo. Meeting up with the Yonko Whitebeard, meeting up with Kaido, stopping the war. A lot of big things were done by Shanks at 37 years old. Then after the time skip, it's Shanks at 39 years old. He's been chilling after the time skip, but we do know, of course, Eustace Kid tried to get some smoke with Shanks. It didn't work. But of course, after Wano, Shanks went after Blackbeard, and Blackbeard wasn't there, so he just pretty much calmed down Greenbow with his Kakurasaki, insane Kakurasaki at that, making an Admiral freeze. People calling it Wi-Fi hockey. Then after that, of course, he destroyed Eustace Kid, but he was looking for intel on Blackbeard. So obviously, Elbaf is building up Shanks' character, but this is building up to finally us seeing Shanks and Blackbeard, that fight that we've been waiting. And it's been foreshadowed since God Valley, guys. Now, I do want to mention at the age of 15 to the age of 26, this is probably when the duels of Mihawk and Shanks happen. And you have to understand, Mihawk, people have been theorizing Mihawk with his eyes connected to Imu. Now Shanks being a Holy Knight, Shanks' mother being maybe a Davy Clan member. There's so many lore to Shanks and Mihawk fighting. Shanks being Roger's fighting style. We don't know who has Mihawk's fighting style, but we know Mihawk became the world's greatest swordsman, has the Yoru, the Supreme Grade, the Black Blade. Shanks doesn't. Shanks as Insane Conquers Hockey. This can definitely show us a lot of insight when we see them actually clash. I'm actually excited to see Shanks versus Loki and Shanks versus Miyuk before we get Shanks versus Blackbeard. And there's around who knows 15 to 26. I'm not gonna say it's Shanks' prime, but it's probably not Miyuk's prime as well. And Whitebeard said the whole Grand Line was hearing about these battles, so it definitely has to be hyped. And lastly, I do want to talk about when Shanks and Whitebeard did meet. People did say was Shanks talking about Garland, but after Garland got pretty much highlighted as a fraud on God Valley, now people are shifting it towards Shamrock. People think Shamrock was able to scar Whitebeard. Whitebeard was the world's strongest man, and he did run the One Piece world after Roger's death. If Shamrock at that young age made Whitebeard scarred, that would be insane, but I don't see it happening, guys. I think he's pretty much just talking about Roger when seeing Shanks' face. I think we're looking too deep into it. Actually, I'm not surprised. Oda is a kind of author mangaka that we do have to look deep into it. So if we're going to talk about Shanks' life, there's 3 major events I want to talk about. The first is, of course, Dragon helping him as a baby on God Valley. This is what shaped Dragon helping Shanks, has shaped what Shanks' life was going to be. He could have been a Marine if they went to that Navy ship. Of course, he could have been a Celestial Dragon if Dragon never helped. Or he could have been a Holy Knight if Dragon never helped. And also he could have been a pirate, which he ended up being because Dragon helped and Captain John interfered. Then, of course, the second major event is Roger coming back from Laugh-Tale. He told Shanks something that pretty much was the catalyst to Shanks doing everything he did to the current story. And I want to hear what Roger said because it made Shanks cry. And then, of course, lastly is Shanks being a Holy Knight, which is kind of piggyback of what Roger said to Shanks after Laugh-Tale, but Shanks becoming a Holy Knight, I think, really pushed him to do some exciting things like finding the Nicodel fruit and many more things, in my opinion. I do want to say this. I'm excited to see everything play out with Shanks, but man, did he not have a crazy life. One of the craziest lives in the One Piece story. He did it all. Holy Knight, pirate, on the Pirate King's crew, at God Valley, at Marineford. He is just everywhere, guys, and I think Shanks is one of the most hype characters in the story, so having so much lore be dropped on Shanks and making everything make sense in the past, I want more, guys. Maybe I'm greedy, but I want more Shanks stuff, yo, because his life is super cool.